My name is Emily. I am 36 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that trust was the strongest part of a marriage. My husband David and I had been married for 11 years. We lived in a quiet town, surrounded by green hills and small lakes. It wasn't a rich life, but it was peaceful. David worked as a project manager for a construction company. I worked as a librarian in the town's public library. Our life followed a simple rhythm. Every morning, David made coffee while I prepared breakfast. Every evening, we sat together on our porch and watched the sunset. We talked about everything, or at least, that was what I thought. 3 months ago, something changed. At first, it was so small that I barely noticed it. David started staying late at work. Then he began taking phone calls outside. Whenever his phone buzzed, he quickly looked at the screen and slipped it into his pocket. One evening, while we were eating dinner, his phone rang. He immediately stood up. "I'll be right back," he said. Then he walked outside. I watched him through the window. He looked nervous. Very nervous. When he returned, I tried to smile. "Everything okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Just work." But his answer felt incomplete. For the first time in years, I felt uncertainty creeping into my heart. Over the next few weeks, things became stranger. David seemed distracted. Sometimes I would ask him a question, and he wouldn't hear me. Other times he stared out the window for long periods of time. One night I woke up around 2 a.m. David wasn't in bed. I walked downstairs quietly. The living room light was on. There he was, sitting alone, looking at documents spread across the table. As soon as he noticed me, he gathered the papers quickly. Too quickly. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Nothing important," he replied. Then he smiled, but it wasn't his usual smile. Something was wrong. I could feel it. The uncertainty grew stronger every day. My thoughts became darker. Was he hiding financial problems? Had he lost his job? Or was there someone else? I hated those thoughts, but they refused to leave. One afternoon I visited my older sister Sarah. She had always been the person I trusted most. When I arrived at her house, she immediately noticed my expression. "What happened?" she asked. I sighed. Then I told her everything. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the strange behavior, the hidden documents. Sarah listened carefully. When I finished speaking, she remained silent for a moment. Then she asked a question. "Have you talked to him honestly?" I frowned. "He won't tell me anything." "Maybe he's afraid," she said. "Afraid of what?" Sarah looked at me kindly. "Sometimes people carry burdens alone, because they think they're protecting the people they love." Her words stayed with me. Protecting me. Could that be true? That evening, I returned home with 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind. David was already there. He was sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. For a moment, he looked peaceful. Then he saw me, and his smile disappeared, as if he suddenly remembered something heavy. I sat beside him. Neither of us spoke. The silence felt enormous. Finally, I turned toward him. "David." He looked at me. "Yes?" I took a deep breath. "Please tell me what's happening." His eyes widened. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he looked down. "I can't." My heart sank. "Why not?" He rubbed his hands together nervously. "Because if I tell you now, everything changes." The answer only confused me more. "What changes?" He shook his head. "I need a little more time." Then he stood up and walked inside, leaving me alone with my questions. That night, I couldn't sleep. My imagination created endless possibilities. None of them felt good. The next morning, something unexpected happened. I was cleaning the living room when David's phone vibrated on the coffee table. I wasn't trying to look. I truly wasn't. But the screen lit up, and one message appeared. Only 6 words. "The surprise is almost ready." I froze. The surprise? What surprise? My mind immediately started searching for answers. A surprise for who? For me? Or someone else? Before I could think further, David entered the room. He quickly picked up his phone. His face turned pale. Then he looked at me. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. That evening after dinner, David finally spoke. "Emily." His voice was shaking. "We need to talk." My stomach tightened. I had been waiting for this moment for weeks. Part of me wanted answers. Another part was terrified of them. We sat together in the living room. David took a long breath. Then he began. 3 years ago, he said quietly, "you told me something." I frowned. "What?" "You told me about your dream." I looked confused. My dream? David nodded. You said that one day you wanted to open a community library for children. Suddenly I remembered. Years ago, I had mentioned it. Only once. It was a dream I never believed could happen. Life was too expensive, too busy, too complicated. I had forgotten about it. But David hadn't. He smiled sadly. I never forgot. I stared at him. What does that have to do with all of this? David leaned forward. Everything. Then he told me the truth. For nearly a year, he had been secretly working on a project. He had been meeting with local business owners, applying for grants, talking to town officials, saving money, researching empty buildings, planning every detail. The late nights weren't secret meetings with another woman. The phone calls weren't suspicious conversations. The documents weren't financial disasters. They were plans. Plans for my dream. Tears filled my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You did all that? David nodded. Every single part. I sat there speechless. The room felt unreal. Then he smiled. The old bookstore on Maple Street? I nodded. Yes, I bought it. My mouth fell open. You what? He laughed softly. I bought it. Tears rolled down my cheeks. That old bookstore had been empty for years. It was beautiful, historic, perfect. David reached into his pocket. Then he placed a small key in my hand. My fingers trembled. What is this? The key to your future library. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. I simply stared at the key. The small metal key felt heavier than anything I had ever held. Not because of its weight. Because of what it represented. Years of love, years of listening, years of believing in someone else's dream. David looked nervous. What do you think? I started crying. Real tears, the kind that come from deep inside your heart. Then I wrapped my arms around him. You idiot, I whispered. He laughed. What? You should have told me. I wanted it to be perfect. I shook my head. It already was. The next morning, David took me to the old bookstore. The building stood on a quiet corner. Sunlight reflected from its large windows. Inside, the shelves were empty. The walls needed paint. The floors needed repairs. But none of that mattered, because I could already see it. Children reading books, families gathering together, stories filling every corner, dreams coming to life. I turned toward David. Let's build it. His smile was brighter than the morning sun. Together we spent the next several months transforming the building. Friends helped. Neighbors volunteered. The entire community became part of the project. And 6 months later, the library opened. Children filled the rooms. Laughter echoed through the halls. Parents thanked us. Teachers brought students. The dream I thought was impossible had become real. All because one person believed in it. One evening after the library closed, David and I sat outside watching the sunset, just like we always had. I looked at him and smiled. You know, I said. What? For a while, I thought you were hiding something terrible. David laughed loudly. I was. I raised an eyebrow. You were? Yes, he smiled. I was hiding something wonderful. We both laughed. Then we sat quietly as the sky turned golden. And in that moment, I realized something important. Trust doesn't mean knowing everything. Sometimes trust means believing in someone even when you don't understand what's happening. Because love isn't built on perfect answers. It's built on faith. And sometimes, the greatest surprises arrive disguised as our biggest fears.